You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast, brought to you by MartinClinic.com. During the episode, the doctors share a lot of information. As awesome as the info may be, it is not intended to diagnose, cure, treat, or prevent any disease. It's strictly for informational purposes.
Hey, Dr. Martin here. Welcome to another live video. This morning, if you can see the headline, I was talking about fruit. God's candies. When do you cut back? Okay, very good question, because now, if anybody has been following me for years, when I had my radio show, TV show, they used to call me Dr. Fruit and Vegetable because I talked about them so much. And you know what? I still do, but the world has changed, okay? The world has changed. We live in a different world. So I just want you to think about something here this morning about when would you cut back on fruit, okay? So let me just give you a couple of things. First of all, I talked about this in other podcasts and other live videos, that estimated 88% of the population in North America is metabolically challenged. So what's that mean, okay? It means that their metabolism, they have a condition called metabolic syndrome. And if you have metabolic syndrome, you need to cut back on fruit. So 88% of the population. So that means only 12% of the population is metabolically healthy. So here are some of the things to look for to see if you're metabolically challenged. Now, the number one thing that challenges you metabolically is insulin resistance, okay? Insulin resistance, that's the number one cause, and that causes everything else to go south for your body, not to your body's metabolism, and that will not work properly if you have insulin resistance. And because we're carboholics today, we live and where, North Americans are consuming on average 180 to 200 pounds of sugar a year. So the world has changed, folks. So when I used to be Dr. Fruit and Vegetable, I still love them, but they're God's candies. You need to be careful with fruits, okay? If you have insulin resistance, which is part of which is the cause of metabolic syndrome. Here's a couple other things. You got inflammation, you need to cut back on fruit. Why? Because fruit affects the uric acid in your body. So uric acid, people think of only gout, but a lot of people, they get gout. That is very true, because gout today is like an epidemic in the world today compared to what it used to be. When I first started practice in the 70s, not that we didn't see gout, of course we did, but we don't see it like we see it today. So gout, but the cause of gout is uric acid, but you might just have pain and not have any acute gout. You might have chronic levels of uric acid that are high. You need to cut back on fruits, because all sugars, good, bad, and ugly, count, okay? 2, high blood pressure. High blood pressure, the number one reason people get high blood pressure is because of insulin resistance. It's part of metabolic syndrome. Guess what? You've got to cut back on fruits. Another one is fatty liver. Fatty liver. And remember, fatty liver really is at the root of, the connection between your heart and your liver is incredible. People don't think of that, but when you start getting fatty liver, and fatty liver, guys, is not from fat. Fatty liver comes from sugars. Remember, your liver is a parking lot. It's a suitcase. When you store too much glycogen from eating carbs, sugars, carbs, guess what happens? The liver becomes fatty liver. And then what happens? Well, how can this affect your heart? High triglycerides. Yeah, because when the liver is full, triglycerides are sent into the bloodstream, and that is at the root of heart disease and stroke. It's triglycerides. So you go back to carbs and fruit. Even though they're great, they're better than a chocolate bar. I understand that. You don't need as much insulin for a fruit as you do for a chocolate bar. But the idea is if you have any of these conditions, you need to cut back on fruit. And, like especially the ones that are especially sweet. Like I always tell my patients, look, you like grapes, but they don't like you. You like bananas? You're not a monkey. Be careful. I'm not saying never have it. I'm just telling you what I do in the office in order to get to get them out of that metabolic syndrome. Okay, so inflammation, uric acid, high blood pressure, high fatty liver, which causes triglycerides, and low HDL, low good cholesterol. Those are all signs of, and listen, do you have a pot belly? Well, then you have metabolic syndrome. We used to call a pot belly beer bellies, right? Remember that? And only men would get a beer belly. You remember that? Yeah, men would get a beer belly when they're drinking too much beer. But today they're pot bellies, and where do they come from? Carbs, sugars. Yes, so that's the key, guys. That's the key. So understand, because people sort of come after me, a little bit, because Dr. Martin, what about these, fruits are good for you? Yeah, but they're God's candies. And don't have too many candies. Don't live on that, especially if you're metabolically challenged. Now, remember Steve Jobs. Remember him, right? I mean, the founder of Apple. And he named Apple because he loved fruit so much. And when he got pancreatic cancer, and God bless him, but what he was doing, I was screaming blue murder. Quit eating the fruit. And so when I get a cancer patient, I tell them, look, you can have a few berries, but you got to get your insulin down, because insulin is a growth hormone. So you've got to lower your insulin. And part of that is to lower your fruits and your carby vegetables too. I could talk to you about potatoes and things like that, especially the starchy ones. But look, guys, I'm not against them. I'm just telling you what the facts are. And we live in a different world today. The world has changed completely. And the big problem in society today when it comes to our health, you guys know me, I talk about this all the time, is the fact that our insulin is high. We live in a different world. We live in a different world than we used to live in. And that is why if you have anything like this, heart, metabolic, which is inflammation, if you are suspicious of any autoimmune disease like MS or lupus or Sjogren's or eczema, psoriasis, these conditions of autoimmune need to be treated with an anti-inflammatory diet. And one of the things you do is you cut back on fruits. Yeah, I love fruits too. And I love berries and that, but you don't live on that stuff, because that is one of the biggest issues in society today because of the craziness of our insulin and insulin resistance. And this is not my statistics, but 88% of the population struggles with insulin resistance. And this is why I talk about this so much. Okay, so if you have any feedback or whatever, just send it off. And if you haven't joined our club, the Martin Club on Facebook, join it. What a great group of people that just come in. They ask all sorts of questions. And you know what I love? The people within the group are answering a lot of those questions and giving feedback. So we really love that. Okay, so hey, have a great day.
You've reached the end of another Doctor is In podcast with your hosts, Dr. Martin Jr. and Sr. Be sure to catch our next episode, and thanks for listening.